Welcome yet again to another Indie Game Spotlight. And today we are absolutely thrilled to be joined by Kenneth from Vindicta RPGs to talk about Overlife, your brand new RPG. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. And brand new is it's out. It's been out for a year now, so it's not brand new anymore. Still new. Yeah,
It's
it's
brand
still
new
new.
to me.
Yes.
It's brand new to me. And I think more importantly is that it's a game that we haven't delved into before. So I'm really looking forward to this. So you say it's been out for just over a year now.
Yeah.
Excellent. So it's been out for a while, but what inspired you? What set you off on your journey to create this game? What made you create Overlife?
Well, I've always been a fan of cyberpunk settings, and I've also played Cyberpunk 2077. I've also watched anything Blade Runner related and Ghost in the Shell. And just in general that setting and the way that protagonists are like burnt out and not really heroes, and those kinds of settings always interested me, where you play like the anti-hero a little bit, not really
Yeah.
saving the world, but more like the small things matter much more. And that's what set out and inspired me to create Overlife.
So it's very much then a more of a sci-fi setting and a sci-fi system than a high fantasy. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. It's way more sci-fi, not as futuristic as true space sci-fi or whatever. More, it's a bit more grounded, but you still have the typical cyberpunk things like body enhancement, body modding, stuff like that, and of course the hacking, which is a big thing in cyberpunk games, where you hack into a net and then you can stick it to the corporations, so to say.
I used to love doing that myself when we used to play Shadowrun. So
Yeah.
I must admit, I do tend to enjoy those sorts of games. So my question is, in that case, if it's a cyberpunk and it's sci-fi, is it set on Earth?
It is set on Earth in a fictional city called Eden City. It's heavily inspired by Night City from Cyberpunk, but it has a much higher focus on noir storytelling.
You mentioned noir storytelling.
Yes.
What do you actually mean by that?
Well, I kind of already touched on it when I said it. It wasn't really about heroes and being the really the center of the story. You very often play someone on the street who ends up into an impossibly big scenario for their little lives, and that's pretty much what it entails. You also very often land into more investigation type scenarios instead of through shootouts and all those things. It's also very much playing upon the idea that everyone in Eden City is constantly chasing something, be it immortality through overlife, which is never really truly identified. It doesn't have a definition, but everyone has their own definition of overlife and what it may mean. For some, it's immortality. For others, it's something else. It could be, it's a bit like the impossible American dream, something like that, where
Yeah,
everybody is chasing something, and the closer you get to it, the further it actually gets away
differences.
from you. So it constantly slips through your fingers. So it's very dramatic, and it's paradoxical as well. That because the harder you try to find it, the more you lose yourself in it. And I think that's a nice premise to set a game.
I do. I think that's lovely. So we've mentioned a little bit about the setting, but I take it that this is a completely stand-alone system, or do you need to play it with a different system?
Well, I started creating Overlife before I had a system, honestly. So,
Yeah.
and I was thinking, how can I build something that makes it work and that is really specific for this setting? But at some point, I thought, okay, what is a system actually, and how far does that go? Because at the very core, this game has a very simple system. a very easy two dice system, add your modifiers, and if you hit a certain number, then you succeed pretty much. But if that on its own, yeah, that doesn't really define what makes it cyberpunk. And so that's also a little bit a counter question, maybe. What do you mean by system? Does it go as far as the people you meet and how the interaction happens? If it's socially, is it part of a system? If you enhance like the body enhancements, is that part of the system, or
It's
is
all
system
part, yeah.
truly the basic dice rolling, the mathematics pretty much? Do you see that as a system, or is a system really everything that entails the game? Because the system itself is pretty modular. I can take it's a system that I created myself. It's the Disco system, which is it's a mouthful. It's a dynamic intuitive system for collaborative orchestration. So I just call it Disco. But I use it in two other games as well. But it's because I made it so simplistic and so small, I can just take it from one game, plug it into something else, and then build the flavor around it, so to speak.
So, so my understanding of that is then you've got a cyberpunk-esque setting,
Mm-hmm.
and that's being built upon your disco system.
Yes.
And your disco system can be utilized for not only your cyberpunk setting, but also anything else that you build. So it's a core system
Yes.
that you utilize for all of your games, which I really like. So I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit, get into the depth of this disco system. And then what we can do is we can expand back out from that into your settings that you've got around this disco system, if that would be okay with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Now, I am going to look towards the man with the system questions and the maths and everything, and look up at him in my little corner screen and go, over to you.
Absolutely. So I'd like to cover the core mechanic, and then we can broaden out and look at how you create characters and stuff like that. And you've already touched on it. 2 dice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which 2 dice?
2d6 dice. So the standard d6 dice, super accessible. Everybody has them lying around somewhere.
Yep. Gives you a range of 2 to 12, the 1 in 36 chance of getting max.
Yeah, exactly. So it's there is an advantage and a disadvantage way. So you add 1 die to 2 best one. The 2 highest ones is the advantage, the lowest ones is disadvantage. So it has that as well. But what I never really liked about other systems where you have to imagine a difficulty class or whatever to hit a target is that it's very arbitrary whether the GM decides at that point, okay, this is difficult, this is less difficult. Let's say if you hit around a DC 13, then you succeed. I never really like that. I like to be transparent up front to players and say, if you hit at least that number, you'll have a success. And in the case of Disco, it's 2 or lower is a critical fail.
Yeah.
And a 3 to 6 is a normal failure. But everything from 7 and higher will be somewhat of a success. So 7 to 9 is a limited success. Like you, in a fantasy game, it would be, for example, you jam your lockpick in a lock. The lockpick breaks, so you lose your lockpick, but the door still opens. That would be a limited success. And then you have an automatic success, everything that is a 10 or higher, and a critical success if it's a 12 or higher.
Okay. That sounds straightforward, and you're right. Everything is above board. The player knows exactly what they're looking to roll, and the difficulty adjustment comes into whether you're rolling normal, with advantage, or with disadvantage.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Yep. And that are those the actual terms you've used? Because
yes.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Because I know, and we've done the same. We've moved to boon and bane, effectively similar. It's different words meaning the same sort of thing.
Yeah, boon and bane is also something that I've seen in Dragonbane.
Yeah.
Oh no, in there it's a it's boon and bane. Yeah, and then you can roll. If you roll, the worst roll is a dragon, or the best roll is a dragon. I don't remember. In any case, you have so many terms that lead to exactly the same thing, from critical success to critical fail to
absolutely.
What's in a word?
Okay, and you talked about adding a modifier. Does this? I guess kind of beginning to step on character creation at this point.
Yes.
So shall we? I'm just trying to think. We normally ask the question at this point before we go any further, but you've already alluded to the answer. Where would you put your system on the light to crunchy scale?
It's very light. Well,
Very light.
Very light. It's light, definitely. Because it's very easy to pick up and play, and it's very easy to add a modifier that is barely higher than 4. So it's very, very easy to play. But it becomes... It gets more depth the more you want to include, because it's pretty modular. You can say, okay, we're going to create the city together, for example, and then every district of the city can be generated by the players on the table. You have all kinds of optional mechanics like machine fever and addictions and all kinds of stuff that actually makes the game more complicated. But on its base, it's just 4 basic attributes, core attributes, with 5 specific skills under each attribute. And with that alone, you can easily play the game.
Okay. What are the 4 attributes?
Physique, mental, interface, and resonance.
Oh, could you go through what each does? Because this is a lovely... I like this already because it's not your usual attributes. So go on.
Yeah.
Could you explain what they cover?
Yeah, so in Disco, it's always 4 attributes. And in let's say a fantasy setting, it could still be physical and mental. But interface and resonance could be something more magic related or obscure, something in that regard. But for example, physique is everything that has to do from acrobatics to strength. Martial arts, firearms are also in there. And then the mental aspect is investigation, perception, sway, which is pretty much trying to convince someone, sway, stealth, and then streets, how good you are with the streets and the people who live in the streets of Eden City.
Yeah.
And then interface is hacking is a big aspect of every cyberpunk game, and interface has to do with much of that, but not just that. It also has to do with your cybernetics, like your body enhancements and diagnostics to check whatever is broken about something digital. Hacking itself is a skill. Then everything that has to do with navigation within like GPS pretty much, but not only that, but also how you navigate within digital environments, and then vehicles, because vehicles in a futuristic setting are not really controlled by your physics anymore, but controlled by pretty much how you can interact with. I think if you've been in a Tesla, it's already like that. You can just put it in drive and go. So I think interface would also be used to operate vehicles. And then the last one. Yeah, go ahead.
So interface, if you're saying sort of operate vehicles, would you also use it to sort of interface with, doors and things that need sort of...
Yeah, it could be used for that as well. Then you could use something like hacking to hack a terminal to open doors, for example. But if it's just a jammed door, then you can still use your power or your might, in this case, to force open a door. That's still a possibility as well.
And I think I interrupted you just as you were getting to your last attribute, because I got all excited about interface.
No worries, no problems. There's also the last one, and that's resonance. And resonance is very specific to this game, where I wanted to really make my system blend pretty much with this cyberpunk world. And this is where the highest sci-fi level is, so to say. There is a digital world, which is called the quantum web, where web divers, people play web divers in my game, and where web divers can go into as a literal digital realm to breach and ghost into beyond the firewalls of companies and stuff, to really have a separate world from the physical world. And I don't know if you've ever played Cyberpunk, but some people, they jack in, like literally jack in, or like the Matrix, they jack into the Matrix, and it's comparable to the Matrix pretty much, where there is a digital world that is almost like a weird fantasy place. Whatever you jack into looks like whatever the company that created it wanted it to look like, or maybe it's
Yeah.
been created by a rogue AI that has created some kind of a weird Lovecraftian world almost. So it really, you can go wild as a GM and say, okay, you land into a weird Escher painting like environment where it's very difficult to navigate and find your way around. But there is this one thing about the resonance, about being able to function in this place, and that is a super AI called Anodyne, and it has some sort of a double meaning here because the people who dive into this world, they need Anodyne to survive here because it's some sort of a
Ah.
painkiller that makes sure that you don't get overloaded with all the information from the quantum web. But you also need to be able to resist it enough to not get addicted to it. So it's
Oh, that's
a specific thing
it's a
for
real
Overlife.
weighing up what you need to do, isn't it?
Yeah, so that really makes people or the players decide: are we gonna hang around longer in here, risk getting? But then they have to do anodyne resistance checks, which is a skill, and if you fail that one, then your anodyne addiction goes up. And if that reaches 100%, then your character is gone, pretty much lost in the quantum web.
Oh wow!
Basically,
Okay,
never wants
so-
to come out again. It's just
Yeah,
you become so attuned to it. You forget your previous life. You just want to stay,
yeah,
and that's
exactly.
that's a
Like
really
sirens. Anodyne is like a siren that
yeah.
would lure the sailors. Pretty much the same thing in with anodyne in Overlife.
Okay, so that's all related back to resonance, yeah.
Yeah,
Your
that all
resonance
relates to resonance,
attribute.
and there are 5 skills in resonance as well.
Yeah.
The main one is anodyne resistance, then
Right.
breaching, how you can breach through certain firewalls. They're not really called firewalls, but certain
Barriers or
yeah,
protections.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then ghosting, how much you can stealth in this world pretty much without being seen by our corporate devices. And
Yeah.
then read and write. Read is how you can interpret things in this world, and write is how you can rewrite those things.
Okay. So it's mostly focused on your kind of hacking, decking, that kind of thing, to use a Shadowrun term. So whilst we haven't played Cyberpunk, we were big into Shadowrun at the time. And
Big.
yeah, and I imagine from what I've heard, Shadowrun has races, has magic, has all of that, and I'm taking it your world does not, which is why it's more down the sort of cyberpunk route rather than the more fantasy sci-fi route of Shadowrun.
Yes, that's true. But when you make some sort of a parallel with cyberpunkish worlds, then you always have other types of backgrounds. So
Yeah.
where in fantasy you have humans, orcs, etc., you can have in a cyberpunk world you can have corporates and corpos, or I lost the the words for now, but there are also several backgrounds that you can pick as a player, and there are in a further extent also classes that you can take that really give you a different background. And where in fantasy worlds, for example, you can say a tiefling is being looked down upon by most of societies. Let's say you walk into Neverwinter as a tiefling, you will meet some hostility.
Yeah.
The same thing would happen in a cyberpunk setting where you are, let's say, a corporate guy and you walk into the slums. Then
Yeah.
you will also get that kind of treatment, probably.
Yeah,
And
the way you
maybe-
dress, yeah, you stand
Yeah.
out. Yeah.
Yeah,
And people who have got a lot of cybernetics as well, you've probably got that sort of animosity against people with lots of cybernetics versus the ones that don't have any.
Yeah,
So
and
you're going to
especially
have
which
that
corporations
as
did you
well.
get your cybernetics from? And yeah,
Yeah.
there are a lot of on the character sheet that you can have reputations with all these factions. From there are 6 gangs and 6 corporations that have all the control over the city, and depending on who you have a good reputation with or bad reputation with, they come after you, or you have there are no real friends in this world, but you can have some sort of an alliance with certain factions.
Okay,
Yeah.
I've just made a note to come back to factions in a bit, because I think that's fascinating. But I'd like to cover character creation fully before we go any further. You said 5 skills per attribute, so that's 20 skills in total?
That is, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I had to do the math for a second, but it's true. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
This is why Dean always does the maths.
I do.
I would have got that number wrong.
What value are your attributes?
What do you mean exactly with what
So
value?
what would be the minimum an attribute could be? What would be the maximum?
You can go negative in attributes.
Okay.
So the first, all attributes, they start at -3.
Right. Okay.
So you cannot really go lower than -3 when you're creating a character. But you get 12 points that you can distribute over the 4 attributes themselves. And then you'll notice that you can't get super high numbers here. So you cannot go higher than a certain amount. It's been a while that I played myself, but I think 3 is the maximum that you could go during character creation. So that means that you can go, there's 6 points. So you can put 2 stats at 3, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Then the others stay at -3, which is maybe not very optimal if you want to have a balanced character. But if you want to have a very balanced character, then you can put everything at 0. And then you don't really get any additional benefits from rolls. So you need to really choose 1 or maybe 2 stats where you can shine in a bit more.
Absolutely. And then how do the stats relate to your skills?
Yeah, so then you need to choose an archetype or a class, pretty much. And once you choose your archetype, you can choose 5 skills that you are talented in. So let's say that you have ghosting from under resonance as one of your main skills. Then hacking, sway, and firearms, and blades, let's say. Those things, those 5 skills will be at least 0 or the same as a positive value of your attribute. And all other, well, I'm just gonna read through it.
Yeah.
So they will have the same value as their corresponding attribute or a minimum of 1. And then you need to choose 5 skills where you struggle with. And they will all remain at -3, no matter whether you're very good at physique or interface or resonance. If you have 5 things that you really struggle with, they will always be -3. Now, there are situations where your skills can drop even lower. Let's say that you have a cybernetic implant that gives you extra might. It could be that it drops your mental by 1, for example, and then everything else also goes lower that is associated to that. So depending on what happens with your character, these stats can still change. Also, there is no real character growth in the sense that physique, mental interface, and resonance can go up by leveling it. But if you growth is also, and that's a little bit like it's far-fetched, but like Legend of Zelda, for example, growth in the Legend of Zelda is when you find better items, better equipment that grows your character, and then your health gets better if you find more hearts. It's a different type of RPG, but in Overlife, your stats, they improve by implants, by gear, by tech, by better weapons that you find, by powers that you unlock. So pretty much that way.
Okay, I'm beginning to
nice.
Yeah, I'm beginning to get a visualization of how this comes together. So I've created a character, I've chosen a background, I've decided to go corpo. I know if I go to the slums, people will hate me, but it doesn't matter. I've got all the money. And I decide to, put my attributes, select 5 skills, and they are a minimum of 1 or equal to the attribute that they come under. And I've got 5 skills, that are at -3, and I cannot improve them.
Yeah, and everything else,
Yep.
all the other talents, all remaining skills, they will start at maximum 0
Yeah.
or the same as their negative attribute.
Okay. So if I've got a -2 attribute, they're at -2. But if I've got a +1, they're at 0 because
exactly.
they're not one of my 5 favorites.
Exactly.
During the game, then, how do I increase skills?
You can increase skills in a few ways, mostly by implants and by better gear and tech and whatever you're wearing, but also, and that's kind of like leveling, is when your street reputation grows, when you go from nobody pretty much all the way to big boss, and that's 6 levels.
I love
And
that. Big boss.
Yep.
Yeah, it's nobody, rookie, dispatch, roller, hotshot, and big boss, which I really wanted to give that cyberpunk feel. And
That's brilliant.
if you go up in name pretty much within this city, then you become tougher, and becoming tougher means that you get more HP. You you can get better skills. You get access to better gear also, which also can improve your skills. It's not directly you get +1 to blades or you get points to spend on things, but shops will unlock that allow you as a dispatch now to buy better gear, to get better stuff that grows your character pretty much.
Okay. Is there money, wealth in the game?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Credits.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm getting a vision, correct me if I'm wrong, that you don't have XP. You have a combination of your street cred. So you want to get your name going up. So you got to do a good job. You got to succeed. You got to deliver on your missions or the jobs you're doing.
Yeah.
And money, because you want to afford the stuff that improves your character.
There are a few things actually that contribute to this.
Yeah.
And the first one is retro vibe. And a very important thing in cyberpunk worlds is how cool you look. And this retro vibe thing is a 5-star thing. And the higher you are there, the cooler you look, the more clubs you can enter, the stuff like that. But also, indeed, your credits. How wealthy are you? And how many missions have you succeeded? All those together can give you a better name and make you rise through the street rep ranks. There is no true experience points to be gained. It's more in the sense that if you finished a few missions, then depending on how the GM has calculated it from the start, like, okay, this gives you 2 stars faction reputation with harmony, let's say, but 2 stars within that company gives you pretty much a better name on the streets. Let's say that you're no longer a nobody now you're a rookie. So it's a bit more vague than in experience-driven games, but it has a more narrative focus in that regard.
Okay, so within the rule book, if I'm looking at this, does the rule book contain guidance for how I would decide how the player's reputation is increasing?
Yes. I don't know exactly on which page that was again, but yeah, there is definitely an explanation on how you can level up your character's reputation. Is page 104. So I'm quickly gonna skip through that. And yeah, as you can tell, there's a full explanation on who has a target on your back. Important to note, there are no true alliances. Yeah, there are effects also. So if you are, let's say, at 5 stars in bad reputation with a faction, then you're a real problem to them. Then you're a high value threat, and they will stop at nothing to get you. But if you're at 6 stars, then it's just kill order. You're done. You're never gonna get in their good graces again. So you are finished if they find you. This is also part of character creation, by the way.
Okay, so choices you make in character creation will affect your starting reputation with various factions.
Character creation is 70% of the book because it's
you have my approval.
It's character creation is so much based on story and the background of characters. So let's say that you chose. Well, you can't really choose your class either. So you first spend your points, and then depending on what your attributes are, you can be a brute, or you can be a cop, or you can be an exec, or whatever. And once you chose that path, then you need to roll through pages upon pages of tables that can be like, yeah, where are you from where in the world you're from, what kind of languages you speak, to what kind of a person you are, all the way from shy to cold and calculating, the clothing style that is your fancy, your hairstyle, you won't be seen without your signature tattoo, stuff like that. What do you value most, what do you think of society? It really builds your character
It's
while you're
nice.
rolling all these things. And in the end, you have at the second page of the character sheet, half of it is born and raised in Eden City, but I also speak, then your language, my clothing style. So it's already
It
suggested in what kind of, yeah.
builds it up round you, doesn't it? So you said roll. Can you choose, or do you have to roll?
You don't have to roll, but there are a few tables that are important that you do roll on.
Hmm.
You can choose if you really don't want to be in financial ruin. Start with financial ruin, for example. If you say I would not like that because I chose to be an exec and I'm already in financial ruin. There could be a story there, but yeah, if you
There's a
don't want
story
to,
there.
you can really choose something else. Nothing stopping you. But there are tables, for example, that say how many friends do you have and how many enemies you have. And I really recommend that
Yeah,
you
that's
roll on those
nice.
tables, because if you just choose, "Oh, I have 3 friends and I have no enemies,"
It
that's
doesn't make for a good
that's a
story
bit
then,
lame,
does
I
it?
think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay, I'm really beginning to get a good visualization of character creation, and it sounds quite fascinating. It's right up my street, which is about
Yeah.
creating a character that has a lot of depth, that feels they have a place in the world that they're being created for. How long does this process take to create a character? So I'm brand new coming into the system, so I haven't even read all the options I've got. How long would you expect me to take to create a character from start to finish?
Yeah, it's not super fast. I once saw someone on Twitter, on X, say, "Oh, you can create a character in my system in less than 3 minutes."
Yeah, we know who you're talking to. Yeah,
And then I was thinking, you can do that in 3 minutes because you know the system so well that you
absolutely.
flip through things and you roll things and you immediately know where to put
Yeah.
Yeah.
everything. So it got me thinking, if I make a character in this book, it's going to be quite fast because I created it. But
Mm.
I do think that you will, because you want to think about everything you roll on. Why have I rolled on this, and what does it mean for my character? And if you really want to flesh things out, then I think it can take you quite long. But if you really roll through things and just write down exactly what's said in the tables, I think you can get through in 15 minutes, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's not something that you can do at the table mid-session. I think it's
Mm.
best to do something in between sessions, or do this in between sessions.
Yeah.
So, in other words, if I was doing the character, it would take me a minimum of 3 hours because I would go, but then I would like, and I would be reading everything, I'd be getting into everything. So, yeah, that is my idea of heaven. One of my favorite things is creating in-depth
You get that? Yeah.
characters. So I absolutely love the fact that you have focused in on the character creation, that you've got lots of options, and that you help build the character from the ground up. I think that's just absolutely brilliant. I think I'm not, when I hear people say, "Oh, you can create a character," in, I'm thinking, well, just how invested are you in that character? When I take a character out in any system, I want to be invested in that character, in the story, and in its survival. And if I've just knocked it up, so to speak, knocked it up, I'm not sure I would feel as invested as if I've pored over each page, looking at it, doing the roles I need to, thinking about the character and how it comes together. So I like that approach. So I think that's great. So the fact that it's most of your book, great.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it all depends a little bit on what type of game you want to play.
Mm.
And this game is really built for stories, while other games can be built for action and dungeon delving and one is not better than the other. It really depends on what you
It's all
prefer.
different, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but if you try to really shoehorn both styles together, force both styles together, then you very often get a system like Fifth Edition tries that very often by forcing storytelling built on a dungeon delving kind of mechanics, and it doesn't gel really well. And yeah, it's also really exhausting to play, to me at least.
If I've seen this quite often, where if the system is designed that you can lose a character on a dice roll, and I'm looking at systems like First Edition, Second Edition, I think Shadow Dark in some respects, then character creation has to be quick.
Yes.
Because your character can die. He can die almost unfairly, but you accept that's the way the system is. If I just spent an hour in character creation and on one dice roll my character got killed, I would hate that system, because it's that mismatch between character creation and what the system delivers. And story-driven systems should have in-depth character creation, in my opinion. So everything you've said there makes me feel, I'm creating a character that I'm going to see grow and develop through the story of the game, and that I will grow very attached to.
Yeah, and everything in Overlife that where you grow in, like be it street rep or there's something like magic, like cyber powers, where you have your implants can give you powers, or certain powers that you can use only in the quantum web.
Yeah.
Everything that is related to growth in the world also means personal growth. If you and growth can be anything. Growth can be, in my eyes, can be getting worse reputation with a certain faction, because that means narrative growth.
Yeah.
And I am a big fan of systems that don't force you down certain meta paths that you can take, where you can say, okay, I'm looking forward to level 3, so I can take this skill specifically, so that on level 4 I can take that one, because those two work really well together, so you can make some sort of a perfect meta build. Games like Overlife that I created can't really give you that, because if you made a huge enemy out of Harmony, let's say, then everything they have on offer that could improve your character is off the table now. But you do have a good backstory that that explains it. So
Yeah.
I'm a
like
fan of
that.
those systems, but there are other systems where you can play the overpowered character and still have a lot of fun. So it all depends.
Absolutely. You got to decide what you want at the table, what kind of game you're looking to play.
True.
So this idea of factions. So I'm really beginning to understand, I think, how the factions work. And you've mentioned a few things that have really tickled my fancy here. And the first one being that you can go to negative. I say you said stars, but I'm guessing it's negative stars, or rather hostile stars with a faction.
So your reputation can go both ways. You rather don't want to be. The thing is that negative would be no stars, pretty much.
Yeah.
And positive. No, sorry, it's the opposite. A good thing would be if you are not on their radar.
Yeah.
Whether it's in a good or a bad way, you don't want to be on the radar of corporations.
Because so that's kind of a 0 star. You're not positive or
they don't know who you are. They have no notion of who you are. But if you have done a few missions, let's say for certain factions, you say, okay, I now have 2 stars in with Harmony or with other factions. Then it could go in both ways. One could be you have 2 stars now, which is better for you in the sense that you can do more deals with Harmony, but it's also a bad thing in the sense that they now know your existence, and it's not always a good idea to be on their radar in general. So reputation is like a double-edged knife or a double-edged blade. So it kind of depends. There are rules that explain this in more detail in the book, but I would say that players should be wise to really keep their reputations as low as possible and try to balance it out. So let's say that you have 2 stars with the Lost Boys of a gang somewhere, but that gang has just by doing that mission, you have stolen weapons from another faction, then it could be that those 2 stars that you had with that faction have now disappeared. In the sense that it's difficult to explain actually when I get the question asked like this, but it's a more like it's fluid in the sense that more stars can be both a bad and a good thing. Less stars can also be bad and a good thing because it depends on what you want to achieve in the world.
I
It's
suppose
also a narrative thing.
if you've got stars, it means that they are far more aware of you. They're far more aware of what you're doing, and therefore they may actually try and interfere if you're doing something elsewhere, or they may try and restrict who you can go to work with, things like that. They will try and sort of tie you down to them the more aware of you they are, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm going to quickly see. So there are no true alliances, so you cannot become a real friend in a world like this because it's really grim. So let's say that the hacker group Brain reaches out to your crew and they have a mission for you, and you have to shut down a set of Harmony-owned systems, waste management servers located somewhere in the fields far out the city. And now you have to understand that as a player, what can be the outcome here, because you're sitting at 2 stars with this hacker group Brain, meaning that they are kind of hostile towards you or kind of wary of you, cautious about you, but you have no stars with Harmony, so you're completely under their radar. What do you want to do at this point? Do you want to be more known towards Harmony in the negative way, or do you want to? Yeah, it's a bit. It depends on what you want to achieve. It's also pretty fluid, and depending on what the story is that you're playing, it can be a positive or a negative thing.
Yeah.
But generally,
Is
it's seen
it-
as a negative thing to get more stars. So the more stars you have, the more you're on their radar, the more they know you. You don't want that, because as soon as you reach 6 stars, then it just means that they want to, whether you've done good or bad for them, they want you
They
to
want to
disappear
remove
because
you
you're
because you know
you're
too
too
much.
influential towards them. Yeah.
Yeah, you either know too much and you've done too much for them. So as far as they're concerned, you're
Yeah.
a liability. You know, it's the tying up loose ends.
Yeah, exactly. So
Or
you know too much
yeah,
of them, and the same with gangs. If you go through their ranks and you gain 6 stars with them, that really means that whether you've done too many missions for them or not enough missions or missions against them, at some point you've reached such a high reputation with them that they just think, yeah, it's best that he disappears, because it's a bad thing for us that he has such a high influence over our gangs or over other corporations or.
Okay,
Yeah.
so stars are pretty much only one way. You gain stars or you lose stars.
Yeah.
If you gain enough stars, you talked about gaining access to equipment
Yeah, so
or
if you're
services. Yeah.
Yeah, so you can get, let's say that you get, it all depends a bit in how the narrative shapes itself, but if you have done a few missions for certain factions, then the stars can go up, which
Yeah.
is a bad thing. But it could also mean that now you can walk into certain skyscrapers of Helios, and now you can go buy their weapons or get access to
Yeah. And
certain
of course,
places.
your name is getting out there at the same time.
Yes.
So it's this balancing act where you want to develop your name. You want to become known because then you get the more lucrative jobs, you get more hit points because effectively you're, I hate to use the term leveling, but effectively you're kind of leveling as your name goes up. But at the same time, you don't want to be too much on someone's radar. So there's a benefit in gaining stars to begin with, but then there's a penalty if you get too popular because someone in that organization will see you muscling on their territory, see you as a threat. It might not be the person you're dealing with who loves you and thinks you're loyal for the purpose that they're using you, but someone else within the organization may think, no, this person's getting too big. They need to be cut down.
Yeah, exactly. But there is going up in street reputation or street rep from nobody to big boss, that's not the big problem to corporations.
No.
But getting too well known within corporations, within factions, within gangs, that is problematic.
Yeah, and of course you're trying to grow your street cred, which means you are going to get known by the gangs, by the corps,
doing that,
but at the
by
same
working
time
for
you want
gangs.
to. Yeah. So in the example you gave where you had Brain, and they said we want you to hack Harmony. So you might gain a star with Brain because you're helping them out, but because you're working against Harmony or doing a job that damages Harmony, does that mean you could potentially gain 3 stars with them because you jump up on their radar? But those stars don't give you access to better gear and equipment because it's a very negative thing you've done.
Yes, it's a negative thing you've done, and then it also, that's what I mean with the narrative. If if the narrative has shaped in such a way that you've gained reputation, it's also something that it's not gonna happen that you're gonna play a campaign or because there's only 6 levels. It's not meant for 2, 3, 4 year long campaigns. So in most cases, you will maybe get reputation with 2 or 3 corporations, or maybe 1 or 2 gangs, because that's part of that story that you're playing. And then you also understand better as a player. Okay, I have 4 stars with Harmony, but I did not get those 4 stars in a good way.
Yeah.
But the 4 stars that I have with the Syndicate, who are like super AIs or rogue AIs, those are good stars because I helped them out this whole time. But good stars is relative, of course.
It is, because whilst you could get access to potentially good programs and stuff to help you with your hacking, at some point someone's going to slip in a bit of black ice in your code because you're too big, you know too much, you're too much inside.
Yeah, you'll notice that, and it's also a little bit telegraphed by the GM.
Yeah.
That okay, you are now 4 stars, which is narratively wise until we've played 6, 7 sessions. You have reached it to Hotshot. The Syndicate, you have 4 or 5 stars with the Syndicate. It's getting on the edge. You still can do what you want within that within their ranks, but you're definitely on their radar. Gain another star, and it could get dicey.
Okay, I like this because there's a lot of stuff that affects how your character can grow, but it all seems to be very finely balanced all around a wrapper of storytelling. Yeah,
yes,
so
storytelling is really the...
whilst you got the mechanics, storytelling decides how those mechanics are interpreted.
So, Kenneth, one of my favourite character classes are mages, wizards. What could I get from your system?
It's layered. In one sense, you can play as a typical brute, let's say, which would be a barbarian or whatever in a fantasy setting, but you can still get cybernetics that can give you certain powers. So you can get implants in your eyes or in your brain, and then you can use certain powers. And it can be from scrambling cameras to wiping archives, all kinds of things that that are not purely hacking related, that you can literally do like magic from a distance. But you can also play as a real, true web diver, and that means that certain powers that would only be accessible in the quantum web, a little bit like that part in the Matrix where Neo stops the machines when they come at him when they're in the real world, quite like that, so that you're an actual wizard pretty much in the real world where you can use powers that normally would only be accessible in the quantum web.
Now that I really like the sound of that, because you've almost got that neural interface into everything around you, and you can influence things much further away than just things you can touch and feel, which to me is very exciting. It's not magic in the sort of traditional I go cast a fireball, but it allows you to do things that if people saw would be like, oh. So I mean that's quite cool if you ask me. And I like that how you've related it back to sort of Neo in the Matrix, because I loved that piece where he was out of the Matrix, they had the machines coming out, and he just looked at them and he was like concentrating and he managed to stop them. But that struggle of how you do it. Is there a actual sort of physical cost to casting magic if you've got, or for this sort of neural interface, if you've got sort of other cybernetic implants, and what is the human cost to all of this?
Well, there is a resource that you need to spend in order to be able
Yeah.
to do this stuff, and it's called spikes in the game. And depending on how strong the effect that you want to evoke is, the more spikes that you need to spend. For example, I'm gonna quickly go to the table because it's a very extensive table, but it's a free form kind of thing, meaning that the table that I have here with over 100 different effects that you can, well, pretty much conjure, are guidelines for a player to say, okay, I want to do something like this. GM, is this possible? Quickly glance over this table and say, okay, mimic a nearby voice in every speaker, for example. That would cost you 2 spikes and a breach roll of 3. So if you roll higher than that, then okay, great. But it's, yeah, like I said, it's very free form. So there are no specific fireballs or no specific
So you're building
spells.
it on the fly. You're building it on the fly, and you're referencing a table to put together your pieces of your magic, if you like, of your spell. Is how you're actually interacting with the world around you.
Yeah.
I really like that. So essentially, you can sit there and you can figure out how it all goes together, and then essentially cast.
Yes.
How many spikes would I typically have? If it's a starting character, how many spikes would I typically cast? And are there certain things that I cannot cast or cannot do until I'm much sort of...
Yeah, if you don't have the required breach, you won't be able to do it. So
okay,
but
what do I have to do to get this required breach?
Breach is a skill. So under resonance, you have a breach skill, and well, it can be from -3 up to 3, and depending on how high it is, the stronger the effect that you can create with your magic or your what's it called, cyber power. In this case, for example, scrambling a single surveillance drone for 10 seconds costs 1 spike and 1 breach. And spikes, you can buy those, but once you have them, they recharge. So
nice.
You can buy them or you can find them. It can be rewards for missions, for example. They're absolutely not cheap, but they should not be cheap, because it's a very valuable resource that makes you literally cast magic in the real world. So it's a very sought after thing. But when I go all the way to the back of the table, and let's say redirect hostile fire toward the ghost target, then you need a breach of 4. That means that literally everyone sees something else that is hostile towards them, that is not real, like a ghost target, and then they redirect their fire onto that. So changing combat in a single
that's almost like, that's almost an illusion, isn't it? That's getting to the point illusions. Where
or like locking all the doors, for example, in a building. That is also something that costs a lot. Well, requires a breach of 4, and a breach of 4 is already higher than what you can get maximum if you put all your points into something. 3 is the maximum that you can get in creation. So that means that you already need implants or certain tech to improve that skill before you're able to use these types of effects and these types of cyber powers.
Yeah. Do you need anything else to do these, or is it just having the breach level, the breach skill to be able to do it? Is there special gear you need?
There is no special gear you need. No, so it depends on how many spikes you have. If you have the resource to do so, that's great. And if you have the breach to do so, that's also great. Then you can do it. But then your spikes are spent for the time being. And then there is some equivalent, like a long rest in D&D, where the spikes recharge.
Yeah.
But generally that just means next session. So
Yeah. Okay.
So for example, if I did something and I spent my spikes, would then, if during the same session, we went to bed, had a rest, got up the next day, would my spikes be refreshed, or would I have to wait?
Then I would rule that they are refreshed. Yeah, if you actually spend enough time,
Right.
downtime pretty much, then those spikes will be recharged. Yeah.
Excellent. So that's really nice because you've got that sort of recharge mechanism, which is lovely. How many spike? Well, I suppose because I can actually get spikes throughout, there isn't. Do you start with spikes naturally when you're on character creation?
Yeah, a web dive. If you can roll a web diver, a true web diver, that means that you're pretty much the wizard or the mage in this game. That means that you have 3 resonance and 3 interface. So if you spend all your points into those things, then you can choose to be a real web diver, like a real wizard, and then you can get. You start with 1 spike, if I'm not mistaken, because it's been a while since I created it. But if I'm not mistaken, what I always do when I create my books for character creation is I always create flowcharts in my book to make it cognitively easier for people to create their character. So you just follow your name, attributes, archetype, etc. It's probably blurred because of the camera, but in any case, we're talking about the web diver. So when you choose your archetype, so I'm the web diver, part of the machine. As a web diver, you roll. So I always add a line on how you can role play them, what the requirements are. So as a web diver, your role is to be the ultimate navigator of the digital realm, embrace the thrill of hacking and exploring the quantum web. Your character needs 3 interface and 3 resonance. You also get a unique ability, and in this case, the unique ability of the true web diver is Hurts Like Heaven. You have advantage on all resonance skill checks, but if you fail, you gain 1d6 percentage of anodyne addiction or anodyne craving.
Ooh.
But I thought that there was a spike as well, but I think I removed it because I found it maybe too strong to start out with a spike from the beginning of the game. It's not mentioned here anymore. So I don't think you start with a spike. It's something that you need to acquire.
But you have a fully functional character, right? Without needing the spike.
Yeah.
The spike is like giving you bonus abilities, things you can do when you're not deep diving and
exactly.
Yeah.
You can still do your hacking. You can still do your breaching in the quantum web. You can still do all those things. You just can't burn someone's eye sockets, eyewear out from the get-go of the game. So that's something that you need to grow into.
Can't burn someone's eyes out from the get-go. I mean, that's just mean.
Well,
is it though? Is it?
At the beginning, you're literally a nobody. So it would be strange to be a nobody who didn't achieve anything in the world yet, and suddenly you electrocute everyone that's wearing cybernetics. That would be a bit strong from the start, I feel.
It would be. But it would be fun.
True. That's the. But then you can always say we started this game, and you start this game as a rookie, let's say, so a level higher, and you've already made a little dent in the city. So let's say that you start out with a spike. So it depends what kind of game you want to play, and if you want to play it as a campaign or as a one shot, or it's really very much suited for one shots. And then you can say I want to play a hot shot or a one shot as a hot shot, or the whole team is hot shots or big bosses even, and then you play on the highest echelons of or against the highest people in certain factions, and that's your game at that point. But if you play as a nobody, then you're at street level. Then your missions will not be go and assassinate the CEO of Harmony. Then it will more be like make sure that you can save the local. What's the name again? Some sort of cybernetic doctor. Make sure that you can help this guy out so that he can provide the locals within this district
Yeah.
with support and stuff like that.
Yeah, get him supplies or something because he's running out. And you know something, there is something to be said about having the lowest level character and watching it grow, though. So I might not be able to electrocute everyone right at first level, but I can live with that
But
for a
also
while.
making impact also depends on, because the impact that someone makes on a small part of the city, because the city is not defined from the start. So depending on where you go as your characters, you have to, and that's another mechanic, by the way, is how the city develops. And let's say that you start the city in, let's say you start at the docks, and it's a very poor district because that's how the first place was created by everyone at the table. So the docks is a very poor district. What does it mean to make impact on a very poor district? That's something you have to think about as a GM at that point. You're all nobodies, but what it means to make impact is to make sure that the local doctor doesn't die, or make sure that that's making real impact for people at street level, making impact for people in executive positions in the highest echelons of Overlife. That would become much more difficult and much more epic to change their lives, so to say. So it doesn't mean that if you play low level campaigns here that you can't make an impact with whatever you have on hand compared to high level campaigns.
Yeah. This has brought a question to my mind, which is, you've got a group of players, say there are 4 players. Do they need to coordinate on the characters they create?
That is actually a very good question, because I have something for that in the book as well.
There we go.
Because a lot of cyberpunk settings, or cyberpunk settings in general, and what was the movie again?
Ghost in the Shell?
Yeah, or Ghost in the Shell, for example, or Blade Runner. That's it. So Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Is that maybe you don't gel really well with the rest of your party, and because there are so many factions, and because your backstory could have generated something that doesn't gel really well with the rest of the party. In most RPGs, I would say that's not really desired, because you want to have like a common feel. But in a setting like Overlife, you kind of need to embrace that drama, and at some point, it could be that your character has only one path to survival, let's say, because of things that happened in your background, but the only way to get there is completely opposite to what another character wants to achieve. And then there is an actual part that I wrote about this in the book, and I think gang's reputation. There's apparently, I forgot about it, but there is also mechanics on owning a ride. Do you have a ride? Types of vehicles. I completely forgot about that.
Yep.
It's all right. We will come on to vehicles in a moment. So
yes,
you're
we've got
absolutely
all the
fine.
gear and stuff to cover. So yeah.
Yeah.
So this is Diver Legacy and Impact. That's what I wrote specifically on your question, Dean.
Yeah.
So, and it has a lot to do with death, for example. So death in Overlife is real, it stings, but it doesn't erase impact. And we just talked about impact as well. So if a diver dies, let their street reputation persist. And it's something that was a thing in Cyberpunk 2077, that everyone who made an impact on Night City gets their own specific cocktail in a legendary bar in the city, named after them. So I really like that idea of persisting reputation, persisting almost like a legacy, legends pretty much. But if you as a player have created or made a certain impact on the city, then something like that should also happen to the game. So let their street rep persist. Let factions react differently to the new character if they know the connection. Build missions that echo the fallen diver's choices. GMs may allow players to continue to play a modified NPC tied to their old diver. So there's a legacy in here. And in another game, the One Ring role playing game, you also have this. So you can grow old and die as a character, and then you can have the new character that steps in can be the son of Gloin, or this you can be
Yes.
you can be the son of, or literally the legacy, and continue playing. And I really love that about those games. So I it's only a small part in the book, but I feel like it really encapsulates. Overlife doesn't reward longevity with safety; it rewards it with influence, narrative weight, and a seat at the table where real power is dealt. This is a campaign setting where a team of nobody divers can, over time, take control of entire districts or set fire to the whole system. Let the story breathe. What part of Eden will they change next? So there is impact is a really, it's not a mechanic, but it has a strong emphasis on the game.
Okay, because I'm
like
thinking we're starting in the docks. It's a very low wealth setting, but one of the players rolls up a corp, a corporate type, which comes with wealth and opulence and I've seen it in Shadowrun where a few GMs kind of they kind of get that character to bond with the party by having them being double crossed by their corp, and then now they're on the run, and it's all very tropey kind of stuff. But within your system, how is there guidance on for the person running the game to take? You got like a very low. I'm trying to think. Like a street kid. You got this bruiser. You got a, these people belong in the streets, and then one player has a character that really shouldn't be in that district to begin with. They stand out like a sore thumb. How would you integrate that, or is it up to the person running the game to kind of come up with an imaginative way that would bind the group together?
That's a good question because it is very specific to a group of people, I think, or how they play, what their goals are, not only as characters in the game, by the way, because that's also why I created. Why character creation is so fleshed out. The chances are much higher than in other games that you get friction, but friction in the sense that you don't. Maybe you all have different goals personally as characters, but you're all still nobodies. And in order to reach a certain or to reach your goals, you need to climb through the ranks first. And climbing through the ranks alone is very difficult. So doing it with the people around you, it's not necessarily specifically stated in the game, but by the way, or in the book, but the way that it's built, I feel like it automatically may, in narrative way, when characters are talking to each other or talking about their goals, they may feel like, okay, there is not a real good match here, but we all want to see that corporation burn. Let's say how we get there can be we may not agree on that due to our backstories, but we do have some sort of a common goal or a common understanding of what is good or bad in this case.
I'm getting overtures of Firefly here and Mel's crew, where they were all very different from each other, and they all had different what they were trying to achieve in life. But they were all very different, their goals were very different, but they all had to move in the same direction just to survive and just to grow, to get money, to achieve their very different goals. So I'm guessing it's a very similar sort of setup within your system and your setting.
There is something specific that I was looking for in the book that answers your question better. I can't really put it into words without finding it right now, but I think it was somewhere near the end of the book. Yeah, in any case, Yeah, like I said, in other games, you want your group to be as coherent as possible, so that they have a common goal and that
Yeah.
they work towards a common goal. Because I had a campaign that once fell apart because everything was rolled randomly, but it was a D&D type game. But because their backgrounds and goals were so different, and it was a sandbox as well, they all wanted to go different
Yeah.
directions and had different goals. And then friction was bad friction. It
Yeah.
was because then why would you want to go that way? It stalls my progress. I don't want my progress stalled. I also want to move forward with my story, and that was really difficult. But here I have the idea that if everyone gets along and is happy with being a party like in D&D, that would not be very realistic in a world that is completely
It's
taken over
contention.
by hyperinflation and by corporations, and nobody really leads a true happy life anymore, but everyone is chasing it. Everyone has their own way or their own perception of what happiness is and how they want to chase it. And I think friction is very necessary in a world like this.
Yeah.
It would make it more realistic.
Okay, I think
Like
that's pretty cool. And talking of the pursuit of happiness, this is something it reminds me of, and I don't know whether this is a game you've played, but Syndicate Wars. And they had a part 2, which was around the Utopia chip. And this was a chip people would plug into themselves, and they'd be walking down the street and they would see this beautiful sunny street. There would be a lovely police officer saying hello to them. And in reality, they're walking down a dirty street in the middle of this bustling city. But to them, their perception was utopia, what they wanted to see, the world they wanted to live in. And it reminds me very much like that. You got people who are striving for that level of utopia, that level of perfection. And it varies from person to person.
Yeah, it's. I think that in a big way, when you are living at street level and living the lowest type of life in Eden City, there is always, and it's something that is inherently human, is to compare yourself with others.
Yeah.
And when you look at the corporations, and especially in a world where there is so much disparity, and the gap between the poorest and the richest is so wide, in worlds like these, that you create real enemies, not only by existing. Only because you exist, you're an enemy, because you are all the way up there in your ivory towers and I'm here struggling. I have to align myself to Rat Pack, which is a gang of scavengers, only to survive. While you are born in your ivory towers, and you're automatically my enemy. It's not
It's the
your goal would not
envy,
your goal of
isn't it?
happiness, and envy. But I think envy has already evolved into something way worse at that point, into true hate at that point,
Yeah.
where you don't even, your personal goal is not to make it into those ivory towers anymore. Your goal is to
It's
make
to
sure that it
drag them
becomes a
down.
level playing field. And that's
Yeah.
also Cyberpunk, where Johnny drops an atom bomb in the Arasaka building, hoping to take down the corporation, but the corporation was too big. But in any case, you want to have a level playing field. That's what those people want. They want to erase it and then maybe start again from.
Yeah.
It's anarchy pretty much. That's what they are after at
Yeah.
that point, because they don't see another way out anymore.
No, they
it's
just want to
tearing
watch the
everything
world
down.
burn. Yeah.
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 Shall we move on to gear? Well, first of all, have you finished on cyber powers, Vicky, or is there anything else you want to explore?
I don't think there would be anything, because I don't think you would be able to do stuff like divinations and things that you would typically
Healings.
relate back to things like that. I can't imagine being in your system. But whilst we're talking about healing, well, you just mentioned healing, I'm going to go down. So how do you actually get injured, and how do you recover from those injuries? And then we can go on to armor, gear.
Yeah.
Sounds
so depending on how many skills that you have, So at the beginning, we said that you have 5 things that you're really good at and 5 things that you're really bad at. If of those 5 things that you're really good at, 3 of those are in physique, then you have a D12 as your starting health. So 12 is your starting health, and every time you go up in street rep, you can roll your HP die pretty much, and you can get injured in the sense that you can literally lose health points if you take damage. But damage, nobody is a damage sponge in this game. The highest you can go would be 6d12. But I think if I look at the weapons already, that the damage they do is way higher. So meaning that if you get shot, you have a very high chance um, of already being very injured or dead already at that
Or
point.
dying.
The focus of the game, like I said somewhere at the beginning, also is that it's more into the nitty gritty of investigations and noir and burnt out protagonists and finding other ways to make it, and maybe some hacking, maybe much more in that regard. There are combat rules, but combat is definitely not the focus of this game.
Essentially, if you get caught in combat, it means that you've probably managed to mess up your nice mission and get caught, and you're now on the run. That's when
or it must be so well prepared that it's heavily in your favor. Because I don't know if you've ever been in a gunfight in real life. Probably not.
No.
Me neither. But it's a very bad place to be in, I think, if you randomly get in a shootout. The chances that you get heavily injured or die is probably
high,
off the chart. So that is kind of this. It's not as bad, of course, because you can get literally up to 12 health points. But in general, the feel would be that if you get into a fight and it wasn't really meant to be, or you didn't want to get into that fight and it happened anyway, chances are that a few people in the party can be dropped at that point.
Yeah.
Are there things like street dogs that can help?
Sorry, what exactly?
Have you got like street dogs who could maybe help patch you up afterwards?
There are doctors. There are ways to regain your health through stim packs, and stims are like, I think you know what stim packs are. It's like some sort of nanobots that you inject that heal you much like unrealistically fast, pretty much, because it's sci-fi. I think it's allowed in a sci-fi world to have something like that. So stims are part of your gear and tech. So you have 5 levels of gear and tech that you can take with you. So your headgear, your clothes, your hands, your feet, and your stim pack that you can take with you. And then you can take weapon specializations and all that. But your stim is very important, and it's something that that I also would like to compare with some shooters that I've played, and that's video game related again. But lately you have in shooters that you can quickly do an injection or do something to bring you back to top health.
Yeah.
And okay, it's not as frequent as in a video game, of course, but I like the idea that, especially in a futuristic world, that you have something that is also rare to come by and expensive to get by. Something that can quickly heal you if you're in a pickle, so to say. So stim packs are like that.
That's great.
Pretty much magical healing.
Yeah. When does your character die? At what point?
When they reach 0 HP, when they reach their maximum anodyne addiction, when they reach maximum machine fever, which is another mechanic. When you implant too much cybernetics, you need to roll resistance checks as well. And the more your augment threshold is reached, so you have a max, depending on several factors, you can have a maximum augment threshold. And if you go above that, you have to start rolling resistance checks. And it doesn't mean that if you go over it, that you immediately go insane. It just means that the chances are getting bigger that you go insane. So if you fail a roll, you gain 1 machine fever. If you fail it 5 times, now you are permanently insane. So you're pretty much a machine, a rogue machine that is going wild at that point.
Is there something that triggers those rolls, or is it pretty much at the beginning of every session you make a roll? Is what's the kind of criteria for triggering the roll?
As soon as your threshold is surpassed, so you have a maximum threshold. Let's say that you start with 3, so you put 3 cybernetic implants. Your threshold is reached,
but
then you need
put
to
another
roll.
point. Right. So if it's reached,
sorry, yeah. As soon as you go over it, yeah, exactly.
Okay. So you add one more. You're now 4.
Yeah.
So
then you're at 4.
You just make one roll.
You make one roll, and if you fail it, then you add 1 machine fever.
Yeah.
You don't go insane.
And that's it. The roll's done. It's every time you pass, you need to make a roll.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
This is nice because this is going to feed into gear and our understanding of gear. So just to finish off the whole death cycle, if any of those things happen, your character's ripped up. It's creating your character time. There's no coming back. Is that right?
Once you go insane, there is no coming back from that.
Yeah.
Not even removing cybernetic implants forced by someone else. At that point, your brain is fried. You're gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the same for dropping to 0 hit points.
And going to 0 hit points means that you are out of life at that point. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay.
So that's good.
Yep, it means death is meaningful. You're not going to have someone run across and crush a diamond on you and instantly you're back to life.
Yeah, and there's also other things instead of just death. So you can go into machine fever. So, and once you reach your maximum, then I have it in front of me here. So once a character reaches machine fever level 5, they enter a state known as synthetic rage. And at that point, the augments overtake the character. So you lose your mind and you're considered dead at that point. And the player must create a new character. But the thing is, that rampage, the other players have to deal with that now.
Yeah.
And now a character in synthetic rage gets +2 to all their checks and gains double HP. And the other players now need to deal with this threat.
So you could have because if it's when the implant takes you over, surely you'd be on the operating table, or is it at some point after when the GM decides?
It can be after, yes.
Yeah, so you've had it, the GM doesn't call for a roll yet, but you put under stress and you're now using some of the new implants that took you over. The GM could at that point say, do you know what? Now you make that roll.
So you start the game with, let's say, an augment threshold of 2.
Yeah.
And it could be that you have certain implants, but the moment that you activate them, then you need to so it's because I understand your question, I think, in the sense that, let's say that you have 3 implants, you now have gone beyond the threshold of 2, so you have 3 and 2, you roll, you succeed, now you should be fine, because that's not the case. So as long as you are on 3, you are above your threshold, and you will have to roll again. The GM mostly decides on these things, but you have to roll every once in a while again to make sure that you don't, because it's not like, you succeed your roll and now you're permanently, because that would mean that your threshold is now 3 for some reason, but that's not the case. So you have to roll again at certain intervals, maybe before combat, after combat, or when you enter a building and a scene has happened. After that scene, now you need to roll again. It needs to be quite frequent, because until you deactivate that cybernetic, you are over your threshold and you're at risk of becoming more and more insane.
I'm beginning to understand that. That's actually quite a cool mechanic. So you can have as much cyberware inside you, but you get to activate the cyberware.
Yes, exactly. So that means, let's say that you have implants for your eyes to see through certain materials.
Yeah.
GMs are also free to create as many cybernetics as they want. But you have that type of eyes. You're not going to be using that constantly. You're going to activate them. You're going to have to roll a cybernetics check to make sure that it activates correctly and all those things. Then your threshold can go up. But as soon as you deactivate them, it goes down again, because you're using your normal eyes at that point.
Okay. And
I like that.
Yeah, if your threshold is 3, but you activate enough to take you up to 9,
Yeah,
Is
then
that
you'll have
worse
to.
than just going over the threshold? Is it like 3 times as bad?
That is probably gonna be worse. But I describe it like that? I'm quickly gonna glance over it.
Things like
They
this
must make
it's always
determine
it's
whether they
just
can.
so interesting, the mechanics that you get around this.
I'm just thinking of how power gamers could abuse a system like this, and it's
I don't want to think you always had to deal with power gamers, dear.
you would, yeah.
I have not really described that part. That if you, let's say, have, I would think that it's much more difficult, but it's something that I would maybe want to add in as some sort of an add-on for the game, because I think it's important that depending on how much you've broken your threshold, that it also needs to add to the target number
The
you
target,
need to
yeah.
hit,
Sure.
Yeah.
because that would mathematically also make sense with the threshold that I have here. But I don't have that written in the rules right now, so it should be homebrewn at this point.
Yeah, I'd imagine any GM would probably homebrew it. It's one of these things that when you look at it, it's kind of a little bit common sense, easy to miss. But when you got a player who's really abusing the cyberware and just going up and up because it's only the one roll, you're going to have the clever GM, the experienced GM, who will say,
Yeah. Also,
"Do you know what? You're now rolling with disadvantage because you're so much cyberware inside you."
Yeah, but getting to cybernetics and implanting them is also not a very common thing to do. You can't just walk into well, in Cyberpunk it's called the Ripper Dock. You can't just walk in there and get fully loaded out. If you only have an augment threshold of 2, then I would. You also need the money
Yeah.
you need to have the certain level to get access to the correct types of. So by the time that you can actually break the threshold by 9, or let's say more than 2 or 3, I think you're already at a level where you have or a lot of money, or I think it's also kind of balanced around this, because when I go to the table of cybernetics, the augment threshold of there are things that have 0 augment threshold. For example,
Oh,
there
right.
is a basic retinal overlay giving you a HUD pretty much, or low
Nice.
light vision. That doesn't break your brain.
No.
But a cyber neural link grants anyone access to cyber powers. So becoming pretty much a wizard that costs a lot of money is $8,000 plus a augment threshold 6, meaning that as soon as you activate that, the chance that you lose your mind at that point is incredibly high.
Hi.
Okay, that's a good one to fix on. So augment rating of 6 or threshold of 6. What determines your natural threshold?
So you start with a 2. Everyone starts with augment threshold 2.
Yeah.
Where did I mention it here? So divers begin the game with an augment threshold of 2, and you can raise this by leveling up, by becoming, probably by some augments that you can activate that gives you more threshold.
It's probably like a little unit where you can plug other things in, and it
kind of dampens or protects your mind slightly.
dampens and protects your mind. Yeah, I bet you there'll be something like that. That's what I do. You see,
There are things that don't cost any threshold, but they do take a slot, of course, in your equipment on your
yeah.
But they could potentially increase your threshold.
Yeah.
But that also means that at that point you can't put anything else in your eye augment, because you already chose to stabilize your mind, so to speak. Or stealth step, for example, quiet footfall reduces sound, +2 to stealth related checks. Those things cost, that one costs 2, augment threshold 2. And then you could say, oh, but I only have 2, but I would also like to use combat ready knuckles, but I don't want to go insane every time I use them. Then you could say, okay, maybe I remove the stealth step and take something that gives me more threshold, or activate something in your eyes that lowers the threshold, or activate a synthetic organ, because it's also on different levels. You have head, eyes, organs, arms, hands, legs, and feet. So depending on where you a neurostabilizer, for example, nano lungs, those things can make you more stable and help you with that threshold.
Similar to the reputation with your factions, this is all very much a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
Making sure you keep everything in tune and you're not going too far in one direction, or you risk losing the character and going insane.
Yeah, that's very true. But now that I'm going over it again and getting these questions, I'm thinking that maybe I should have explained it in a bit more a clear way, because in my mind it's very often much more clear than what it is on paper or when people are playing it. And also, when you're testing a game, you never really get that far, or not always get that far into testing, that you are literally seeking the boundaries of character creation or the boundaries of character growth. And I think that's also a problem that D&D has, that they test it maybe until level 12 and everything else is kind of statistically based on what happened before. And I think
Yes. Breaks
because
after
this game,
breaks after 9, yeah.
Yeah, so I think this game may also have that, because it's in a to a lesser extent, but that it's really tested at the beginning stages of the game, but that the further you go and the further you go into your machine fever and the further you go into your addiction, that's not really thoroughly tested, I feel like, and especially because I get these questions now, because I can't give a clear-cut answer to this. Mechanically, this is the answer to that question. I think when it happens at this point, and it's also the curse of rules light games, that you have to make sure that you, as a GM, are quick on your feet and can give answers like this while the people are playing. And what happens when my threshold reaches? I'm going to activate this cost 6 threshold. I only have 2. I'm going to activate it. What's going to happen to me? Then you're going to have to homebrew or quickly come up with a ruling at the spot. And that's a bit the curse of rules light games, that you cannot have a solution for everything.
You can't have a solution for everything.
Every system has its pros and cons, and rules light typically require you to make a lot more judgment calls because it can't cover everything. But then a rules heavy system will cover everything, but then you're stuck going, oh, hang on, this has happened, back to the rule book, what's the ruling? So yeah, completely understandable.
But this one I want to revisit though in later stages, because I think it's a very, when we talk cyberpunk and cybernetics, it is very mechanical. I feel like if things feel mechanical, then they should also have a clear answer to questions like these. So it's good feedback at the same time. So it's something that I will also take with me and check in a later stage. When I ever go back to Overlife, if I ever want to make more content for this, then I will revisit that.
When you do your second edition.
Yes, my Overlife second edition.
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Moving on gear. Just a couple of two quick things. Armor and weapons. How do they kind of operate?
Yeah, they have a damage die, but they also have reliability. Sudden zoom in for dramatic effect.
Dramatic. How does this work?
So they have a price, they have traits, they have ranges, they have ammo capacities, firing modes, damage, reliability, and manufacturer as well, because
I like that factions, reliability.
Yeah, reliability. And if I go to so reliable, 5 is maximum reliability, 4 is less reliable, etc., etc.
Nice.
So yeah, there's a ton of weapons because it's a modern world. The modern world requires an overload of weapons. It doesn't mean that everyone will ever get all of these weapons, but damage, for example, the first weapon here on the Delta Dynamics manufacturer Delta Reaper weapon is already 4d6.
Wow, that's a lot of damage.
That's a lot of damage, but I think if you get shot by an automatic rifle, that
It would hurt.
it's gonna hurt.
So the system tries to emulate a very realistic combat feel.
Yes, and
so you really want to avoid if you do combat, you got to be ambushing, you got to be surprising your opponent.
exactly.
You've got to be taking them out fast.
Yeah, and there is so many other paths that you can take in modern settings. Like if you have the possibility to lock doors that certain enemies that are behind that door can't enter while you are attacking a single individual, or when you're stealthing, you have several stealth cybernetics, or you can. There are many other ways instead of just walking into a random encounter and now you have to fight 5 individuals. That's
5
not the
bandits
goal of
have
the game.
appeared. Off you go. Yes.
Yeah, it's not the goal of the game, but
No.
it could happen, and then it's still human versus human, you know. So at that point, it's equally dangerous for them as for you, and it's not necessarily mentioned in the rules either. But humans are not just I'm just gonna randomly start shooting people that I see. There are 5 people in front of me. Let's just blindly attack them. Probably there's gonna be a negotiation. There's gonna be some talking first.
Halt,
depending
what are you
on
doing here?
Build up, of course, but
And armor, do you have like body armor, cybernetic armor, dermal armor, stuff like that?
Yeah, there is also armor, from headgear to clothes to hands, feet, and I already touched on that one also, the retro vibe, how cool things are. So every piece of equipment also has a star, or could not have a star. So for example, a tactical visor can give you 1 star retro vibe, meaning that you become cooler pretty much. Your armor increases by 1, but it does cost you $1,500, which is as much as an automatic rifle. So clothes are cool and expensive.
Yeah.
But there's also just normal shades, and they don't give you armor, but they do give you extra cool factor, extra retro vibe.
Nice. Yeah.
And armor is literally just removing it, lowering damage. So incoming damage minus, let's say you wear a tactical suit with 3 armor, you gain 1d6 damage from a punch or whatever. 4 damage minus 3 from your armor, you only take 1 damage. So as simple as that.
So just thinking about the retro vibe then, say, here I am, all cool, looking cool. And of course, I walk into somewhere with our group, we're trying to do something. And unfortunately, those 5 guards that we thought we'd sent off on a different sort of path turn up. Would looking cool help me if I try and talk my way out of this situation? Would my, as I flick up my collar and I flip my glasses, would it help?
Yes, it's also a sort of resource retro vibe, these stars that you have. So it's your cool factor, it's your street cred. It can be killer outfits, but it also means that those stars they mean something to a player and a player character. You can spend those stars. They also then reset after. Oh, my cat also jumps on me.
Oh.
So
we always pause for cats. That's absolutely fine. They can always say
pause
hello.
for cats.
Yes, we pause.
Hello, darling.
So yeah, when you have retro vibe, you can burn those stars to get advantage. Only 1 at a time. So the cooler you are, the more resource you have to spend it to get an advantage. So an extra die on your dice rolls, meaning 3d6 instead of 2d6, and take the best from that roll.
Do the stars come back? Or
those stars they replenish at the beginning of each session. So meaning that if you are fully decked out in the coolest tuxedo ever and you walk into a party and you need to do some very important roles at that point to sway some important corpo guys, then you can spend some of those stars. But it may also have a role play effect in the sense that my cat is bumping into my microphone. It could also have a roleplay effect in the sense that, okay, you're losing some cool now. You're spending your cool, literally. What does that mean? And I would, as a GM, I would ask then, okay, you're losing your cool in this party. How does that reflect in your behavior in this party? And what are you gonna do with that?
Nice. I like that. I like that a lot. So I've managed to talk my way out of this encounter because of the fact that A, I look cool, and B, I've got a really good. So what would I use? Would you expect me to just role play me trying to get out of this encounter and being really cool, or would I also have which mechanic would I use to convince somebody that, well, actually I'm absolutely authorized to be here and so are my pals, and I'm quite sure you should be somewhere else.
Yeah, there are no real human to human interaction mechanics in the sense that I have seen games where there are layers in social interactions where you have to do series of dice rolls and see if you succeed at them or not. To not make it binary, or you fail in this conversation or you succeed in this conversation. Again, this is a rules light game, so I'm not going to ask multiple dice rolls to get through a social encounter. This is more up to the GM, I think, to see, okay, what are your arguments? How good are you
Lovely.
at talking your way out of this? And if you do want a dice roll for this, then there is the sway skill to see if you are good at lying, if you're good at convincing someone in that way.
No, that's lovely. I think that's fantastic. That's lovely. Now, we did mention, I heard the words that you've got vehicles.
Yes, there are vehicles,
Tell
but
me about them.
it is also in a very rules light, vague kind of way described. So let's see, moving around Eden. So there are several ways that you can travel in the city. It's a modern city, so you have public transport and taxis and sky taxis as well. There is a maglev monorail. There's all kinds of ways to get through the city. So it doesn't really matter if you have a car or not. Maybe it's even a hassle to have a car. But on the other hand, you also want to be cool. So you can own your own ride, and maybe you have a ride. And this is how I described it in the game. So owning a ride doesn't come with spreadsheets or receipts or whatever. No need to micromanage the cost of having a car either. Just work it into your character's background and street trip. You want a fast car, talk to your GM. Meaning, if you are a nobody and you do have a car for some reason, what kind of car would that be? And then you have types of vehicles, from street bikes and cruisers to velocity cars and all kinds of things. But it could then this is where the mechanics do come in. Having a fancy car can make you a target. So some gangs or corporations, they may want to have that shiny car, or they may think, okay, those colors or whatever that you're flying there is against our corporation. So there's also ways to custom build your own street brands.
Nice.
There is a way to, yeah, why would you invent your own vehicle brand? Because I want to give that to the players. If you're creating your own ride, what would your car look like? So yeah, custom rides and their makers, they leave a mark. Whether it's a modded street bike patched together from junk and ambition, or a sleek electric death trap with no corporate label, there's power in rolling up in something no one else has. So I really want to give this to the players and say, you do have a car, maybe as the party, because I'm not going to give everyone a car, but you start out with your own car. What would that mean for your character? If you're a corpo, maybe you have a velocity car, but if you started out as a nomad, what does that mean? Do you have maybe some kind of a weird hovercraft type situation going on? So I want that to be, the car should have its own story also. So was it built in some chop shop, or did some kind of a weird tech cult create your car?
There we
Yeah,
go.
stuff
Do
like
weird
that.
hand movements
I
again.
know.
There we
Just
go.
to lock it in place. And then I'm going to ask my big question.
I thought you wanted to ask a question. That's why you were raising your hand.
So, does your car give you retro vibe?
The car does not give you retro vibe because it doesn't really walk with you into rooms and into...
No, but if it could, a player turns around and says, we're going to this restaurant, we're to meet this group, they're going to be at the front of the restaurant. We're going to pull up in my Phantom XL with the red stripes down the sides. It's beautiful, the silver trim, black leather, red, sort of red outline. And we're going to pull up in that just to try and impress them. Could they gain, say, a star of retro vibe for that session? Because it's the cool factor kicking in.
Then I'm going to go back to the retro vibe rule. Because in the retro vibe rule, it doesn't specifically say that you can only get stars from the gear that you're wearing. You can only get stars from just being very cool. You jumped sideways of a roof into another window, and then you shot a guy in the head while doing so. That's a pretty cool thing to do. You get in D&D it's
inspiration.
Inspiration, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So much like that, you can add a star to your cool factor, because you're gonna walk out of that building now acting cooler than the way you got in. So there are ways to get more stars. You can also lose them if you do something stupid by fumbling or whatever. You can also lose
retro vibes more your kind of inner presence, your inner confidence. Yeah, so you're getting dressed, you got your lovely shades on, this beautiful suit, and your confidence is just rising, and that's your retro vibe. And then you do something stupid the moment you go through the door, and that's like losing a point now because you're feeling a bit foolish.
You trip over, fall flat on your face, and you feel a bit stupid. You lose some of that cool factor.
Both gaining retro vibe and losing it should also have like a role play effect. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I like the idea of retro vibe. I think that's really cool.
The way I described it here is rocking a trench coat lined with neon threads. That's a star. That's something you get from your gear. Pulling off a hack while sipping synth coffee like it's no big deal, then you get another star. Because you're doing it. It's also kind of motivating the players to think in cool ways. Like, I can do this. I open the door, I do my check, I roll, and we did it. It's done.
Yeah.
But if you give them incentive to give them advantage down the road that could be helpful to them, then they will think, oh wait, but I'm not just gonna do it that way, I'm gonna do it the cool way. And then you should reward such behavior, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic mechanic. I think it's also really leans into encouraging people to role play, because when you're around the table, you'll be more inspired to describe what you're doing and to make it sound cool as well. So I think that's a really good thing to sort of weave into your game. That's superb.
Yeah. I'm seeing so many layers. I mean, Kenneth, you said it was light system, and it is a light system. The mechanics are light, but there is so much depth that you have revealed here. So many layers that all work together to create what is quite a unique. I mean, this isn't cyberpunk. This isn't Shadowrun. This is something truly that seems to stand for me in its own silo, creating a very unique world. And of course, you said it's very modular based, so whoever's running it can add their own flavor into it, however they want. I think it's, we've mentioned two systems that go heavily into combat, and it's one of the reasons we love Shadowrun. The combat was great, but boy, the combat took forever, and it was just one of those things. But your system, it's, I think the closest one you mentioned, which is Blade Runner, because Blade Runner, the action scenes in Blade Runner were, if someone pulled a gun, you hope they didn't hit you, because if they did, it was pretty much over. And when you had Deckard against, trying to think of the last android, the one that Rucker Hauer played, the punching, the bashing, the damage. It wasn't comic hero damage. It was real physical, and Deckard was close to death at the very end. It was one last punch away from losing all those hit points and dying.
Mhm.
And I can see that scene playing out in a game like yours, which I think is
Yeah, I can.
fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
I-
it's a great example of a scene because in the end, I don't know spoilers. No spoilers, maybe for people who haven't seen it. It's a must-watch movie. I love it.
Yeah.
But
It
I think
is,
that last encounter that he has, and the last conversation that they have at the very end,
Yeah.
that's pretty much what makes it, and also what is a big inspiration for this game is that bullets don't always have to fly, or maybe they did, but at some point humanity can still take over. And whatever does humanity mean in a world like this, right? Because you can go insane because of the machines that you put in your body. So humanity is a very undefined thing at this point. It became very blurry, and that's also the message of well, Blade Runner. So, what does it mean to be human? It's like the Pinocchio syndrome and all that. But
Yeah.
that's also something I really wanted to put into this game, that the more you do, you can lose yourself into a digital world, you can lose yourself into cybernetic implants, you can literally become the machine. So everything from starting out as human as possible, as close to human as possible, but the further you get in the game, you will lose chunks of your humanity, and that's something I wanted to really be reflected in the mechanics.
Yeah.
I do think that comes across. And when you're talking about your game, I can see those big buildings with the neon lights, but the really dingy, sort of almost mucky, dowdy streets below, where any sort of remnants of beautiful architecture is now decayed and gone, and it's all been, and you get that real sense of, well, funnily enough, what I see for sort of Blade Runner, it's that real grittiness. So you've got your book out. So I'm going to ask you a question. Have you got any art in the book?
Yes, it is all pixelated stuff. It's like it's stuff that I took from movies. For example, this part is from a movie that I took a screenshot of. I didn't just copy paste it, but then I pixelated it. I cut out the car itself, put it in a different background, put some steam over it, and because it was horribly photoshopped, I just made a complete pixelate filter over it. And for all of the art in this book, it was the easiest art I've ever done, because I just mashed together some things, played with the colors, and then pixelated everything. And I thought, well, great. That's the simplest art I've ever done.
You've got quite an eye for sort of graphic design and doing things like that. And I think you've got a real vision in your head on what you wanted for the game. So I think you've probably managed to bring it exactly to life as you wanted it.
Yeah, I can show a part, like this is just,
Yep.
these are just pixelated colors, but it gives the idea of a city, and it gives the idea that there are skyscrapers, that maybe there's some fog there as well. But honestly, it's just blocks and colors. So yeah.
But you know something, when you look at something like that, your imagination takes over. And I think that alone is important, because the way you've described the way that the game is, as soon as then you see a piece of art that looks like that, if you've read a description, your mind is going to go immediately there and it will fill in any of the blanks. So
That's
I think
true.
that's a fantastic approach, and I really like it.
Well, some things are much more, are very clear. What it means. There's like a guy who's smoking on the edge of a roof, for example, or some things you can really see what it is when you choose your path or your archetype. You can. It's also pixelated, but it's almost like PlayStation 1 era pixelated, or even 16-bit era or 8-bit era pixelation. it's a suggestion of what is there. So other things are maybe a bit more obscure, but here, for example, StimDoc, then you can read or you can see what the art literally means, while at other things, yeah, sometimes I also just made some drawings of equipment.
There we go. You're already well
Yeah.
ahead of us. We can't even draw our own equipment. We managed stickmen,
Yeah.
maybe badly.
Yeah, I like to draw also, so I'm doing for my latest game that I'm working on, I'm doing the art fully myself. It's a lot of work. It's gonna take a ton of time to finalize everything, but it's also fun to do. So yeah.
Absolutely. So
That's fantastic. And when that game you're now working
yes.
on, yes, you will come back and talk to us about it, won't you?
Yeah, it will take a while to finish though. It's not gonna be for this year probably. Also, when I work on things, I tend to jump from project to project to not get burnt out specifically on one.
Yeah.
So I'm working on Depths, but also two other Overlife games at the same time. But working on the Overlife games is much easier because I have the baseline, and I
Yeah.
already have the system there, and I have a lot of it is already there. So it's much easier to build on that. While Depths, I'm really still struggling with the math, and I'm really still struggling with the balance pretty much. And yeah, I think it's especially for an OSR style game that matters the most. That you really get a very balanced system because their combat will be very important, and the focus will be much more on very fast character creation. But even still, when I'm working on Depths, I already added some mechanics that are very specific to storytelling more or work into narrative systems more. But now I'm thinking maybe I can somehow split it up that when people dive into the dungeon, that they use those mechanics. And when they are in the city and when they are negotiating and when they're talking to others, maybe I can use other mechanics so that you have a pretty much a split in your character sheet that one is specifically for adventuring and the other is specifically for but then I'm also thinking maybe I'm making just two different games here. So I'm still in that phase pretty much in the concept and in getting that done.
As we all know, it takes time, it takes patience. In Dean's case, it takes spreadsheets and delving into things and then trying it and then arguing with himself and trying it again. And then eventually he gets to the point where Vicky says, no more changes.
I know. No more changes.
No more changes. And it does take time. I mean, playtesting for us has taken a couple of years now to get to this final point where we've actually stopped tweaking. And we've done high level playtesting. We've done, because one of our biggest bugbears for things like D&D, as you mentioned, was the fact that after 9th level, it, 9th to 12th, it gets really bad. After 12th, it's impossible. And we love high level play. So
Oh, yeah.
we completely
I feel like there are not a lot of games
understand.
that tackle that really well. Because yeah, the more powerful you become, the more powerful the world needs to respond to that, and it's the balancing act there becomes way more difficult. So I really commend you guys for trying that and going for it, because yeah, I really feel like that if you want to go for long-term campaigns and if you have a group that meets very regularly and is motivated to keep going, and you can go all the way from 0 to 20 or from 1 to 20, yeah, then it, especially in the later phases, leveling in the beginning pretty much goes fast. You go, but then it goes hyperbolic and it becomes more difficult to level. So you will spend more time in the higher levels if you want to go all the way up to 20. So from 12 to 20 will probably take longer than from 1 to 12. I don't know how the system works that you're building, but if you wanna play high level play, then those 8 levels will be maybe 70% of the playtime. So if if that's your goal to achieve that, then you should focus very hard on high level mechanics, high level spells, high level enemies, high level stories, all those things.
Well, the secret we've got is that the numbers you roll don't change from first level to 20th in the way of your skills and your ability to fight and respond, because you're as good as your training, and that training doesn't go up as you go up levels. You get more tools, you get more abilities, more ways of dealing with things, you can take more punishment. But if you're 20th level and you come across 100 orcs, you're going to be thinking twice. Unless you're a caster, but even then, if you're a caster, you hope you kill them fast, because if they start laying down fire on you or getting close, you're going to die.
Yeah, you're in trouble.
To that onslaught. But you're still a powerful character, and it's balancing that power. You're not superhero power. You're just powerful.
It's something that is very, very difficult to imagine in a lot of RPGs where growth is so exponential that at some point you become a walking god, and then 100 orcs doesn't mean anything anymore. But
they got to roll 20s to hit you, and you just And no, in our system, someone attacking you is as good as they've always been, and you've still got to respond. You got to dodge. You got to parry. You got to spend energy to defend. But anyway, we're not here to talk about our stuff. Kenneth, you said the game's been out for a year.
Yes.
If someone wants to get their hands on it, where would they go?
DriveThruRPG, or you can also go to vindicast.com. No, not Vindicast, sorry, VendictaRPGs.com. Vindicast is my show on YouTube. But
of which links will be in the description below.
Perfect. So there is, if you like a long form, me talking head situation about tabletop role playing games that links to UX design, user experience design, and the human brain, and why people make certain choices, why things happen at the table. Very often people think that it has to do with bad intentions, but most of the time it has nothing to do with bad intentions, but just organic occurrences. Yeah, and that's what I talk about on my YouTube. And then for my books, things that I've created, you can find them on DriveThruRPG, which is Overlife, but I also have a Cthulhu horror game.
Do you know what? I think we need to get you back on in the future just to talk about your Cthulhu horror game, because I think that is fascinating.
It's like a very small booklet, but it's a full game nonetheless.
Yeah.
And I also have a D&D style game, which is Rust and Ruin, which Depths will be a continuation of, but an old school style game. And you can find all that on DriveThruRPG. And everything is bundled together on my website on VendictaRPGs.com.
Fantastic. Do you know what? It's been brilliant. I've thoroughly enjoyed going into this in depth. And I think it's such a lovely system. You want to play? Yes. Oh, if you could arrange...
I would, because I love... so I'm a massive Blade Runner fan. Philip K. Dick was one of the authors that I loved reading. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think I got Dean into Philip K. Dick, didn't I? Was it that one I got you into? But I absolutely loved his work. And the way you've described everything just makes me want to play.
That's great. Yeah, that's the goal.
So I have a feeling at some point I will be reaching out to you about seeing if we could do a one-shot.
Oh, that would be cool. There is actually a one-shot all the way at the back of the book. I say it's a one-shot, but it actually takes up to 4 or 5 sessions maybe. Because it's such a role-play heavy book that when people get into it, they can skip immediately to the different scenes that are described, but yeah, it doesn't happen usually like that. You know, players are players, right? And the scenario is called The Grey Harvest, and it's a story that is a bit like, or it's based on the Ship of Theseus. I don't know if you know the Ship of Theseus. When is it still the Ship of Theseus after all the planks have been replaced? Is it still the same ship? That kind of thing, knowing that losing humanity without too many spoilers. That's what the one shot is about at the back of this book. There is an actual play on my channel as well, but it's not very good. I was only getting started with podcasting and all that, so I don't recommend to go and listen.
Do you know, we'll have to get it in the diary, because I would love to do a one shot of this. But it has been fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Vicky, have you enjoyed it?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can visualize your setting, and I can see myself playing.
Yes, I've really been spending 12 points on attributes and stuff to try and get the character. I'm really taken with, you know, a vision of the kind of character I'd love to play. So it's yes, we need to get that in the diary. But thank you so much, Kenneth. I know you've been under the weather and you've managed to hold out for just over a couple of hours, and thank you.
Yeah, it was a blast. Really, I had a lot of fun talking about this, and this is also very helpful, by the way, for creators like myself, because it forces you to sit through a lot of, not in a bad way, by the way, because it sounds so bad, but it's not. But it forces you to sit through questions that really make you think from different perspectives. And because of the format of how this is made, like an interview, it makes it also very open. So the answers that I give, I don't need to sell the game, because I want to talk about the game, because I'm the one who created it. I want to talk about the mechanics and how it works and all that, and it makes me reflect on the system I made from a different perspective, and it helps me to maybe next time I'm building something to ask myself different questions as well, or reach out to people to let them ask me some questions. So that's it's very helpful, and it's also a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
It has been lots of fun. We really have enjoyed it, and thank you, because time for games designers, time is precious. We know that. So the fact that you're giving us a few hours of your time means a lot to us.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really a lot of fun.